Alright, CNT120, Chapter 2. We just left off talking a little bit about some data rooms that we might have. And in our data rooms, having a equipment rack like this, there is some equipment in there. So let's mention that. In any of our data rooms, we are going to have racks to hold equipment, and we'll probably have patch panels for terminating our cabling. Well, real quickly, the racks are, as you see here, literally, they come in 2-post and 4-post. We'll get some details on this later, but it really is just a frame that allows me to bolt things like routers and switches into, as well as things like patch panels. That's what it's there for. The patch panels, these are, as they say here, data receptors. These are basically a panel that can mount there that'll handle my cabling. My horizontal cabling coming from the outlets all over the building are going to get terminated to these patch panels. Here's a close-up of the patch panel here. It's going to get terminated. The cabling from the outlet gets terminated to the back of this patch panel. And the front allows us to use a patch cable and plug that port into whatever switch we need to connect to. So in an office, if somebody plugs a phone in, we might take a patch cable and plug it to, switch A. But if they plug a computer in, we might take a patch cable and plug it into switch B. This gives us the flexibility to plug that into where we need it. If it's an access point, we might plug it into this switch. If it's a printer, we might plug it into a different switch. So all those outlets scattered around the building get terminated to the back of this, and then the front allows us to take a patch cable and plug it into the switch we need it plugged into. That's what that allows us to do. These patch panels come in 24, 48, and 96 ports. These kind of coincide with switches that you would buy, 24-port switch, 48-port switch, etc. If I look at the patch panel, here's the front where I plug the patch cables in. Here's the back that I terminate the cabling coming from the outlets. I terminate to the back of this. I lay the wires in there and I punch them in to terminate them. That minimizes the amount of plugs and connections where interference and noise can occur. Here's if I take a look at some of my equipment racks here, those patch panels will be terminated in there. Here's my drawing of the equipment racks here. There's the patch panel here. And again, this is showing the cabling coming from the outlets gets terminated to the back of the patch panel. And then I use a patch cable from the front to plug into things like network switches. That's what that allows me to do. Here shows you a close-up of the back. There's that horizontal cabling coming in and getting terminated into these little slots that are there. And then here's a drawing showing from the patch panel. I would literally plug a patch cable up and into a switch port. That's what that allows us to do. Again, this kind of acts as that like circuit breaker box in your house to turn on and off electrical outlets. This is I'm going to connect and disconnect these data ports to my switches in my network. I might also have some voice over IP equipment. Anytime we have a device that takes our voice, converts it to send it across a data network, that's voice over IP or IP telephony. So my devices and I think I have down here, an IP phone, this IP phone is going to convert my voice into data packets to send across a data network. So my voice over IP equipment, I used to have a phone switch, PBX. Nowadays, I usually have an IP phone plugged into my network, and my voice traffic gets routed along with my data traffic. And here's where some of the voice over IP equipment would be. Here's my phone, and then here's the back showing it actually is a network port. And a lot of phones actually have 2 network ports, which allows you to plug the phone into the switch, and then the PC at your desk can plug into this phone. It minimizes the amount of connections that are needed. So you'll pay a little bit more for the phone, but a good quality business phone allows you to plug the phone into the network, and then my computer, my desktop that's sitting on my desk into the phone. That's what that allows me to do. And again, showing you where it's the connection's going here, back into the closet. My phone is connecting back into the switch in the closet. Well, the switch in the closet needs to be able to handle the phone. The switch needs to be able to power the phone through what's called Power over Ethernet. It literally sends power for the phone through the unused data wires in the cabling. So it's actually able to power the phone from the switch. That allows the phone to be placed where it's needed. and allows you to have power to that phone wherever it's needed. But it also allows this switch right here is typically on a battery backup, and typically there's generators backing that up. So this switch, if there's a power failure, can still power that phone sitting on somebody's desk because there's battery backup connected to the switch, and then there's usually generators connected up to the battery backup. So in the event of a power outage, the phones on my desk should still stay powered. This is when they're talking about voice over IP equipment. They are talking about the phones, but they're also talking about the switches in the closets that are able to power those phones. And we need some commercial grade switches to do this. And they are a little pricier when you buy them to have the capability of sending power to the phone. All right, a couple more things on our tour stop one, if you will. So we're still dealing with some entrance facility stuff. We might run into some punchdown blocks. So a little bit, kind of historical. In closets, you often would find 66 blocks or 110 blocks. 66 blocks were primarily used for phone, regular, analog phone. I hate to use the word old school, but I'm putting little air quotes around older analog phones. I'm putting little air quotes around that. 66 blocks got used to terminate that. Later on, 110 blocks got used for phone and also for some data. And the terminations to them got handled with a punchdown tool. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. Here is a 66 block terminating phone wiring. This is traditional analog phone wiring here. And the way this block is set up, roughly half the block over here connects to, you have a half a block over here and then a half a block over here. And then I can use either little clips or other jumper wires to connect a wire on a phone on this side to a phone on this side. That's typically how they would work. So I would have maybe some phone lines coming in here. They would get terminated on this side. I'd use a little clip called a bridge clip, and I would connect to the phone system in my company on this side. So you would have a wall of 66 blocks like this to terminate phones to the phone system. Phones around the building to the phone system. That was a very traditional system. Many businesses and places used phones and phone systems like that. Some of them used 110 blocks. This is an example of 110 block here, and it actually had two pieces to it. We had the wires you laid in the bottom, and then you would snap a clip on top to terminate it, and then you would punch another wire in here. Some phone systems use this because it was a little bit better termination for noise problems. So some data networks use this as well. But as you see here, this was phone blocks. Here is the punchdown tool that you would use to terminate those. Here is one here. This is similar to what we have in our lab room, and here's a close-up of one. These blades that go in, you can slide them in and twist lock them in place. Here's a blade that would terminate to the 66 block, and here's a different blade you can snap in to terminate to the 110 block. And this device here, as the wires are laid in, you literally push down on it, and there's a little spring mechanism in there to punch that wire in. It gives it a little, like a little tap, if you will, to punch that wire into the block. And there's a 110 block being terminated. Here's the 66 block being terminated. So you might see in a closet, you might see some of these. A lot of places have phased this out. A lot of places have phased that out. But you might see that's phone system, traditional analog phone systems, if you will. And then you might see some 110 for phone, or in some cases, some data connections might have used this. So those are thrown in there so you recognize those. Okay, so there is the end of tour stop 1. We'll come back in the next podcast moving into tour stop number 2.